Hey besties, welcome to the No Podcast where we talk about youth health and well-being, proudly brought to you by SET SRHR Africa Trust. My beautiful name is Panashe Chibata Moto, also known as The Dynamite, and I'm super excited to be on your screens today where we're going to be talking about a very important conversation. Remember, we always talk about SRHR, but the good part about this conversation today is we have think tanks, we have policymakers in the house. It's another thing where we talk about SRH as young people, and it's also another thing when we have policymakers in the house. So this is going to be a 6-part series. I'm going to delve deeper on what we're going to talk about, what's going to be happening, but I promise you it's gonna be fireworks. It's gonna be exciting in here. So I'm not alone. I do not like riding solo. I always have people with me. So joining me on today's podcast are two handsome gentlemen in the building. So they are going to introduce their names. That is your name, where you're from, what you do, what you're well known for, Moma Streets. So I'm going to start with the young man. You tell us your name, where you're from, what you do, and what you're well known for.
Thank you very much. Such an honor to be in such an auspicious space. So my name is Denzel Wata, and I come from the great city of Chitungwiza. And what I'm mostly known for in the streets is people think that I'm, even earlier today you had the misconception. People think that I'm actually older than I am. So people know me for being that person whose age does not match his description.
Wow.
Okay. So you know what, Denzel? Most times on social media, people say it's unheard of for you to ask a woman her age. But I guess when it comes to you men, it's very normal. So for us not to speculate, not to deal with assumptions, you can as well just tell us.
My age is 19 years old.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Denzel. Moving on to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Panashe. My name is Daniel Molokele. I'm a member of Parliament. I represent Wange Central Constituency in Mat North. By background, I'm a lawyer by training. I'm a human rights lawyer, but most of my adult life, I've been a public health advocate. So I come also from the background of being a member of the Portfolio Committee for Health under the Parliament of Zimbabwe, and with a lot of background in SRHR issues. I'm also a very experienced he-for-she champion.
Okay. You left an important part, Honorable. What are you well known
For being loud-mouthed. I can operate my own radio station if you give me a license.
Okay.
And I can compete with ZFM and Star FM.
Can you compete with me?
It looks like I found my match.
Thank you so much, Honorable. It's good to have you here. So this is a 6-part series called the Parliament, Adolescents and Youth Engagements podcast, where we're going to be unpacking the emerging SRHR needs of young people and the current landscape of SRH in Zimbabwe and even beyond the borders. So going to my first question, I'd like to address it to Denzel. And it's good that we have a young person in the house because you know what's happening. You said you're coming from Chitungwiza, and I know deep down there in Chitungwiza, that's where also a lot of shenanigans are happening. So I wanted you to get into the conversation and also tell us what is the current landscape of SRH? How does it look like for you as a young person?
Thank you very much for the question. So coming from the third largest populated city in Zimbabwe, you get to see a lot of things that are going on, especially in the SRH space. So I would like to break it down into different sectors based on the person that we'll be talking about. So we do have a certain group of individuals, very few, who know their sexual and reproductive health and rights, who actually engage duty bearers, who are actually actively involved in the space. So they're actually well informed and make very good decisions. But the thing now is the perception that the public has about them is that, those two goody doers, they don't know nothing, they think they are fancy. So most of the times when they try to engage with other young people, there is usually that blocking off where the young people don't want to engage with other young people. So I'm going to look at it from a perspective of a young person who doesn't have the privilege to actually have known some of these informations, actually have the passion to actually try to learn or follow, or even the opportunity to know what it is and what it means to them. So most of them, they're actually driven by just one thing. You wake up, you go to school, you come back home. You wake up, you go to school, you play with friends, you eat, you come back home. And very little do you hear young people discussing about their SRHR. So the landscape now becomes, we do have a lot of young people who are not informed and not engaged in issues to do with their SRHR. And that's going to affect them because they need to have a certain level of knowledge. You can't solve what you can understand. You can't address what you do not know. So the young people do not know, not because the effort is not being done, not because they themselves do not want to, but it's something that we're trying. The reason for this podcast to actually find out what the real root of the problem is. But the landscape now becomes they do not know, and some do not even care about it.
Okay. That's a lot of information right there. And you know what? I was just thinking, and I was also looking at Honorable, to say by the time you were 19, were you engaging in these conversations? The talk of sex at home, it should have been a taboo.
Definitely, it was another country. You have to skip 2 generations to get where I was. I think I was 19 or 18, around early 90s. That's when I did my A-level. And Zimbabwe was still newly independent, about 12, 13 years old. So we're still very conservative at that time. And we're beginning to engage HIV and AIDS. That's when we're beginning to break the silence and beginning to become more open-minded as a society. But the whole infrastructure was built on taboos. And anything related to SRHR, related to sex, it was engrossed in taboos. So that's how we're raised as children. Every time we wanted to talk about sex or SRHR-related issues, there was a whole framework culturally around taboos to disengage us.
Okay. So it's one thing when we have conversations like this, when we are seated like this, and we are talking from probably a work perspective, but it's another when you get home as a parent and your 14-year-old daughter tells you about her boyfriend and how they kissed.
Yes.
It's another. So I'd want you to get real into these conversations. As a father, as an honorable member of parliament, we want you to take off the jacket. And also tell us how it is for you as a parent when you hear your 14-year-old daughter say, Daddy, I've kissed my boyfriend for the first time. Classroom block.
Yes. You are reminding me of a story where my daughter once told me that her classmate had a boyfriend. And when I tried to find out how real that was, it was really horrifying for me because she was around grade 6, 7 at that time. And of course, my daughter told me she didn't have a boyfriend. I'm not sure whether I believed her. I doubt she would have told me, Daddy, I've got a boyfriend. But it also explained to me in terms of a shift in terms of culture from the generation that I come from and the generation that I'm parenting. And that's a reality that I need to adapt to because I know as a boy that I used to think my parents were old-fashioned, but I don't think the level of gap that I see between myself and the current generation is similar to the one that I saw between myself and my parents. These are much more sophisticated beings. They are much more exposed. Because remember now there is information technology boom. We've got these TikToks, we've got these, they've got all these sophisticated things, even Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Facebook is now old to some of these people. So they've got access to information, videographic information, audio information that we as children we had no access to. Easy access. So they now know a lot and they're exposed to a lot. And more importantly, they've got very curious minds and they are very highly experimental. So when you're assuming that this is how far they know, you'll get the shock of your life. And I also forgot to mention that they've got electronic gadgets right at their fingertip. I finished my entire university years without having a cell phone. I only got a cell phone after I left university. So the first time I had a cell phone, I was about 23 years old. But you have my daughter, when she went to grade 4, part of the prescription was that we must buy a tablet. And we didn't just buy a tablet that are for children. We bought like the most expensive tablet from Apple. And for that, the one that is used by adults. So she has easy access to Wi-Fi. Then she has got the latest electronic gadgets. She can download applications. So she's much more sophisticated for age compared to what I was as a child.
Okay. So which also means that your parenting skills are also refined according to what she is experiencing as a young child growing up. I don't know how old she is now, but would like to know better how you are parenting your own children in relation to SRHR. Back to why we are having this conversation. As an honorable, how does the landscape look like for you?
I think we are struggling as a country. In my earlier or other life before I became a parliamentarian, we were working with what we call the SR commitment, where we actually address some of these issues. And there was a clear conflict between what we're trying to push with the ministries of primary and secondary education and what the parents and guardians were pushing for, or general society. Because if we talk about adolescents, we will go to the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education and say, can you give us an idea, for example, of teenage pregnancy rates? You will know that a country like Zimbabwe, every year, we're talking about primary schools up to grade 7. They've got statistics like 3,000 to 4,000 pregnancies per year. That means people are below 14 years. Thousands are getting pregnant at grade 6, grade 7 level. Then at the same time, we're talking about adolescents and access to SRHR services with or without a guardian. Then there's a serious conflict of interest to say, how do a parent expect a child who is 13-year-old to be on contraception? So the question was, which is a better shock? To know that your daughter who is 13 years old is on contraception than to hear that your daughter who is 13 years old is 3 months pregnant. Which one is a better option? So for a lot of parents, from a religious, cultural point of view, they were struggling. And I also was an enlightened parent, and I will try to enlighten other parents to say that we have to adapt to the reality on the ground. So, and the issue of saying guardians must be involved, parents might be involved, then we'll also say it defeats the purpose. Now we're also talking about adolescent-friendly SRHR services that completely disengage parents. So can you imagine, when you're at work as a parent, you don't know what your child is doing at primary school. We haven't spoken about secondary school and the to avoid pregnancies. Or I forgot the other point, the rates, the prevalence rates for the HIV epidemic are highest on the girl child, on the adolescent girl. So to fight HIV and AIDS, we have to prevent the infection rates. So it means we have to protect the girl child. And how do we protect them? We start talking about PrEP, start talking about condoms, with or without the parents. So that's a very huge conflict. Up to today, it's difficult to reconcile, especially from a cultural and religious point of view.
And I love the fact that you hammered on access. You know, as we're growing up, there are emerging SRH needs of young people. Let's talk about the Termination of Pregnancy Act, which has been in existence since 1977. But right now, when you're asking young people, they say, my body, my choice. I need to be given a chance to decide whether I want to keep the child or I don't want to. So which is also another controversial issue, because when we sit even in the parliament to deliberate about these issues, nothing tangible has really come out of it. And that's the more reason why we have you in the house. So Denzel, what are some of the emerging SRHR needs that are prevalent that you are seeing as a young person in the community?
In terms of SRHR needs that are prevalent, I would like to speak from my context because it may differ in the geographical area that you're coming from. We do have a lot of need amongst the young people for condoms, which is a method of contraception. And the thing is, condoms have somewhat progressed to actually be more available in the recent years. But recently we've seen that they're still available in some spaces, but not as available as they used to be. And now we are now trying to battle the issue that if children are supposed to be given condoms, is that us protecting them or us putting them at risk by encouraging them to do that? So I actually think that the first need that's actually most prevalent but least addressed is the parental and guardians' involvement in the whole issue. Because as much as we might try to take the child away from the parent and try to educate the child, as long as the parent and the child are not on the same page, there will always be conflict. So there is need to actually talk to the parent to tell the child themselves. But in terms of cultural, traditional, and religious background, that can be an issue. Another issue as well is the issue of consent. We do have an issue of consent where young people are not really sure what consent means to them, what rights protect them from being from being forced to do certain things. And because young people don't know what consent means to them, most of the times they realize that they could have easily avoided maybe a sexual engagement or even avoided a relationship, avoided something just by saying no, but they do not know how to say no. Not because they can't, but they were not taught. And you can't just expect someone to just wake up and start telling the boyfriend that I don't know. Because if a boy approaches you and then you've got 5 of your other girlfriends telling you he's the hottest dude in the school, you obviously be pressured to say yes, because if you say no, people are going to say you're stupid.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't know what you want, she's lame. And so the consent issue is a very major issue, and as much as it involves the young people, it also involves the parents, because as everything, charity begins at home. So does sexual and reproductive health and rights. So does education. So does knowledge. So most of the things that you later on develop in life begin in the home. So there's need for further engagement with the parents, whether they like it or not. Like what Honorable said, they are going to have to face the music that this is what's going on. And it's either you choose this or you choose this, but either one of them is going to be happening eventually. Then also another need for young people that's not being addressed, it's actually the access to services and how to navigate the healthcare system in terms to get maybe treatment, or even to just ask, like, this goes even beyond SRHR, because even in Zimbabwe we've got a lot of cases of cervical cancer, a lot of cases of cancers that are happening, and not because the cancer was not there, but because people didn't know how to react to the issue. They get sick, they get something wrong, and then they start thinking it's taboo, or maybe it's just something I ate. So the same happens to SRHR. Young people do not know what SRHR means to them. And as they do not know what SRHR means to them, when they face an SRHR related problem, they don't know how to navigate it. And at some point, most of them usually realize they could have prevented certain issues, certain things happening to them if they only knew. If I only knew to go to Population Services Hospital, if I only knew to do this, and that, maybe I would have been in a better place. So that's a very prevalent problem, that young people are realizing that they could have gotten things better when they've actually had it worse.
Thank you so much, Denzel, on that. And I love the fact that you hammered more on access, you hammered more on funding. And it's very critical that we also address this issue, because most times we're relying on funding that's coming beyond the borders. And as Zimbabwe, we need to domestically fund our health services, our SRHR needs. So Honorable, as you sit in the Parliament, how does this funding landscape look like you, and how do you feel about it? Because as young people, clearly we're not happy about it.
Definitely, I'm also unhappy. Unfortunately, I'm doing something about it. Just for your information, about 3 years ago, I was part of a conference in Nairobi where parliamentarians met and discussed their concern about domestic financing for health in Africa. We launched what we call the Pan-African Parliamentary Task Force on Domestic Financing for Health. So I'm the co-chair for that platform. It's a network of parliamentarians who want to promote funding for health. So for the last 3 years, I've been part of that process to say that Africa must fund its own healthcare. But more importantly, Africa is resourced enough to fund its own healthcare. While we're talking like that, Africa has got a policy commitment which they signed in 2001, what we call the Abuja Declaration, where heads of states and governments said, enough is enough. This colonial dependence must come to an end. Because any researcher will tell you that most of the healthcare services in Africa are funded by Western donors, especially the colonial ones. So African leaders said, we want to fund our own healthcare. It's now 25 years later. Most of the countries are still depending on international funds. Zimbabwe is one of those countries. We have struggled. We've never, because the main commitment in Abuja was that every year when the Minister of Finance announces the budget, at least 15%
yes.
of that national budget must go towards public health. In Zimbabwe, it has never happened for the last 25 years.
Exactly.
We were at a meeting today, and the permanent secretary was giving presentation, and he said, according to the Minister of Health, for the last financial year, the budget allocation was 13.1%, and it's one of the highest ever. But we shouldn't get excited about that, because we also learned that the actual disbursement is less than 50%. So the year is about to end. So we don't know how much more money will come through by December. But what we are talking about is saying President Donald Trump in January signed an executive order that started the process of ending PEFA, which was a very important institution, and also USAID, which was a very important institution. So all across, not just Africa, but the global south, American money was being used to fund even programs on SRHR across global south. And Zimbabwe was one of the countries where the program like the one for Dreams, that is funded by the American taxpayer. So the departure of American funding, and West still is having a ripple effect. Other global north countries are saying, if America did it, why can't we what? Do it. So we're having a serious meltdown in terms of funding in Africa, and Zimbabwe is not being left behind in this problem. So lucky enough in Zimbabwe, we are sort of ahead of time, because during the HIV epidemic years, we developed what we call the AIDS levy, administered by the National AIDS Council. In recent years, we have introduced a series of health-related taxes that then increase our capacity to respond in terms of funding for health. We actually have a tax for airtime and data. We have a tax for fast foods. We have a tax for sugar. We have a tax for tobacco. So these health-related products, taxes, are meant to create extra funding that we can now use to do what? To finance, especially when it comes to non-communicable diseases. We have a serious epidemic, especially of cancer. Most women in this country are dying due to cancer. And prostate cancer is the male one, is also on the rise. So as a country, that's where we are. We have also in the process of introducing what we call the National Health Insurance Bill, where we are trying to change the landscape in terms of medical insurance. Remembering that in Zimbabwe, the average citizen does not have health insurance. Funny enough, the average citizen has funeral insurance. So Zimbabweans are very good at preparing for death and not preparing to live.
Exactly.
So we are not investing a lot. So less than 15% of the people in Zimbabwe have got medical insurance. So this National Health Insurance Bill is expected to improve our ability to respond, because that is a universal public insurance for access to health care. So it's also going to help to improve what we call the right to health under Section 76 of the Constitution for young people, for everyone else. So that's where we are at the moment at a policy level. We have also proposed that the National AIDS Council be changed in terms of its mandate. It's already practically doing many other things that have nothing to do with HIV and AIDS, including SRHR things. So what we are proposing is that we have a new law called that creates the National Health Council, because we've also heard that some of the taxes, they are going to the National Consolidated Revenue Fund, and they are not being immediately dispersed towards health care. So the Minister of Finance and Treasury are saying we need to ring fence those taxes in terms of the income that we're getting, and they need a law. Like the AIDS levy, they use the law that created the National AIDS Council. So they need an institution and a fund, a facility to divert that money to. So that's the direction where we are in Zimbabwe. And we are also hoping that the pressure that is coming from the departure of funding from international donors is going to improve our ability to be independent as a country, and also for the rest of Africa and the global south. We must fund our own healthcare. Zimbabwe is not poor. We've got a big mining industry. We've got agriculture. We've got tourism. We can afford to fund our healthcare. We just need to realign our budget in terms of allocation.
Okay. And how do you think young people young people can take advantage of the opportunities that you've mentioned? How can we leverage on the opportunities that you have mentioned? And also, what are some of the opportunities that you have seen within the space that you are in as a policymaker that young people can ride on and take advantage of?
I think for me, what comes to the immediate mind is that since we've got a massive reduction of international funding, you will see that most programs in Zimbabwe for the last 20 years or so, or even 30 years, that deal with young people or deal with the teenagers or adolescents are mostly funded by international donors. So there is need then for the young people, Denzel and his generation, to push, especially during this budget season. Want your voice to be louder, want your voice to be organized, to be articulate, to make sure that in the 2026 budget, there is actually funding that has got direct impact on the health or the reproductive rights of what young people in this country. That means you need to be more organized as young people in Zimbabwe. You need to be more deliberate in this budget season, and also to engage even the Ministry of Health to make sure that in terms of their bid, there is enough money in terms of responding to the SRHR needs and healthcare needs of young people in this country, because most of your funding until now was not from Zimbabwe. So there is a risk of a huge funding gap for SRHR for adolescents or young people.
You know, I'm shocked, Denzel, you're quiet because you guys have been deliberating. You guys have been talking. This is not the first time that we're having these conversations with policymakers. It has been an ongoing conversation for so long. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure where we're getting it wrong. I'm not sure how young people are getting it wrong. And I think, Denzel, this is the part where you need to chip in and talk to the honorable to say we've been deliberating, we've been talking about these issues, but really nothing has been done actually.
Yeah.
All right.
Just to say, Denzel, as a parliamentarian, I can't see your voice as the budget season has started. Even today, there was not a youth-led organization pushing the agenda from a health point of view. So I just want to put it out there that we need more advocates from young people.
Exactly. Which is actually bringing to what I was about to talk about. That in terms of having young people in the space, there is two problems to it. So the first problem would be the space is a bit too tough. And of course, if we want progress, we ourselves are going to have to toughen up. But to some extent, we also expect you to also loosen up a bit. Because as much as we are trying, as much as we are pushing, we feel a certain level of negligence where we feel like we are not being heard. And as a person who's actually getting into the space at the first time, they actually feel that they feel a bit discouraged, and it takes a certain level of inspiration to actually be able to try to push for certain things. So that's number one. Number two, we are not informed. These things are not taught in school. You don't get taught how to be an advocate in school. They don't teach us how to advocate. They don't teach us how to review policies. They don't teach us some of those things. And we go to school to learn these things. So if we are not learning it at school, we are not learning it at home, where are we going to get the information, the encouragement, the capacity to be able to actually walk into the parliament and say something that means sense? Because if I walk into the parliament and I just start speaking my mind in a way that's offensive or rude, you obviously won't listen to me, even if I'm saying something that's correct.
Call you out of order.
Exactly. So we are not actually taught how to be in order as young people. And that's another issue as well. And us as the young people as well do not have that level of interest. So it's a problem that's being faced at multiple levels. Okay. But in terms of this budget season, I would actually like to say that I personally have seen more young people engaged in these activities. We had, if it's not the second, it's the third Youth Inclusive Budget Conference, where we brought out a number of issues. And some of those issues had to do with the youth desks, which are our gateways to the ministry, and the youth caucus, which is our gateway to the parliament. We need more of those things in local levels. We need more representation from those people. I don't have to come from Gokwe to Harare to see the youth desk. Yeah. So there's a certain level of publicity, which is my next point, that these things are under-publicized in the platforms that young people get to see and in the way that young people can actually engage and interact for them. Because when you publicize the hearings and some of the things, your main target and audience is not young people. You're targeting older people, which is actually a gap on us as young people, because we don't get to, you say it's open to everyone, but you know that at the feedback meetings for the ward, you're a councillor, right? You're a parliamentarian. At the constituency feedback meetings, most of the population will be older people. But that doesn't mean that we don't have young people who would like to participate. But in terms of the publicity of spreading the information to the young people in a way that the young people will be able to understand. Because our young people are also well behaved. And we were taught that when you're at a table with an older person, you're supposed to keep quiet, and you're not supposed to say against what the older person is saying. And that's something that most of the young people in Zimbabwe have imprinted in their minds. So I can't go on a discussion table and start disagreeing with you, because I've been told for over 10 or so years that you do not speak back to your elders, you do not speak in such a way to your elders, and you do not even disagree. So to say a certain level, I already walk into the room 10 times discouraged. And those are some of the things that are limiting our interaction as young people. And another thing as well is we rarely, the progress that's being made in youth issues is a bit slower than the progress being made in other issues. So when we advocate for something, it's usually taking longer than other things. And the thought of trying to advocate for a change in a certain field, yes, I do understand that the policy making, the law making process is a very long process. It has a lot of things to do. But even in terms of just ensuring us, reassuring us, telling us that we are working on your issue, that would be enough. Not to just say that there's something happening, maybe an update. So, which is my last point actually, we need more transparency, we need more visibility in what's actually happening. You mentioned the different levies that the government is collecting. We as young people would actually like to see where those levies are going, how they are spending, because we also need to understand the what's happening to the money that's being taken from who and who. And those people who are actually paying the levies, honestly speaking, they should actually also be involved in at least maybe one or maybe two. That's a policy issue involving companies that produce tobacco, that produce alcohol, to actually get involved in a certain level of community advocacy, community rehabilitation, because they are causing most of the damage with the products that they make. So they should actually be engaged in a greater level in terms of rehabilitating the damage that they are causing.
Okay. Sorry, can I add something?
Yeah.
I think institutionally, the Parliament of Zimbabwe is a role model to other public institutions. We do have what we call the Junior Parliament, which tries to do some of the training that the schools are not doing. So we've got, every year we've got a Junior Parliament system. I've got a senator in Wange there from high school and whatever. But we also have a youth caucus that is increasingly strong and assertive. Like Denzel has mentioned, for the last 2-3 years, youth are one of these few sectors that are actually having a huge pre-budget conference. They actually meet at the National Assembly there for some days and articulate their issues. Other marginalized groups don't have that. For example, people with disabilities, the women people, they are not having that kind of setup. So we're already seeing a clear investment. Where I see an obvious weakness is in the public relations department.
Exactly.
Because when I joined Parliament in 2018, Parliament was not that virtual. But in the last years, Parliament has done well in terms of usage of social media. They've done well on Facebook, they've done well on Twitter. But I think I can commit myself to say I'll engage the public relations department and also the youth caucus to push for some staff to be engaged. Staff like Panashe, staff like Denzel, to come while they're 19 years old, 20 years old, and become employees of Parliament. Then they will do podcasts, they will do TikTok, they will engage young people. Because it's different from when it's on the Facebook page or when it's on the Twitter page, when it's on TikTok. So I don't think Parliament is flexible enough now to engage the younger generation. Parliament is trying to be youth friendly, and one of the obvious weaknesses is that they need to go to where the young people are and engage them at their level.
Exactly.
And I know that they have a very short attention span. They will never watch these live debates that we're having for 2 or 3 hours. But on TikTok, it needs less than 2 minutes. But the message is being what?
It's being
Sent
spread.
through. So even these celebrities that we have, we need to find a way to
Engage
have
them.
ambassadors that are what? Public feed. There's a word for it. Influencers.
Exactly.
Young influencers sort of are partnering with the parliament so that some of the issues that parliament is pushing do not just reach to the older generation, but also young people who are the majority. They also feel that Parliament of Zimbabwe is actually youth friendly. So I'm going to push for that one, to say let's have, as a starting point in the public relations team, a very strong, even starting with 2 young people who are like strong and assertive, and having a TikTok channel that is strong. What's the other popular youth channel that people like me don't use? Instagram, also Parliament of Zimbabwe is there-ish. I don't think they are strongish. So they can also push for Instagram. But it needs someone who is young, who understands the youth psychology. I was once young. But I also wanted to say something, Denzel. When I was at university, we got organized as students. I was in the SRHR at one stage, but also we built what we call the Zimbabwe National Students Union. And at that time, when we rebuilt the Students Union, we were saying each youth or each student cannot be heard. But if we unite into a platform, we are much more likely to be heard. So I want young people of this country to build institutions that are youth-led or student-led that address their issues. So even when it's a budget season, we don't necessarily expect all the youth to come and engage the budget process. But if there are strong and articulate youth-led organizations or student-led organizations that are able to harness what they think is the majority feeling or view of young people, students, then they bring them into platforms like the one we had today as a portfolio committee for health. It just dawned on me this afternoon that, come to think of it, we had some stakeholders that are not part of Ministry of Health or Health Service Commission, but they were the broader civil society. We didn't have like a stakeholder who is like dealing with adolescent SRHR the way SAT could do it or any other organization could do it. So we need to challenge young people, including Denzel, to say those who are a bit more enlightened like him should look for each other. And you don't need to be a lot of you. Even 2, 3 of you, you can start a youth-friendly, youth-led organization, and then you start to engage all other stakeholders so that your voice is heard consistently. Because while you're accusing people of not listening to you, you are also being accused of not speaking to them or engaging them or being articulate enough to be what? Because the truth that young people should be taught is that the world is a competitive space. So everyone is asserting themselves. People with disabilities are saying we're not being heard. Women people, rural people, youth people, marine people. Everyone is saying I'm not being heard. Makorokozas are saying I'm not being heard. All veterans are saying I'm not being heard. So it's a competitive space. And the budget season is about competition. And usually the loudest people get attention more than the quiet ones. So young people should get structured. Even if you are 3 of you, you start your own youth organization, Zimbabwe Youth Advocates Forum, and you start, and then you groom other young people to follow you. And you develop branches in Chitungwiza, in Bare, and you research with those young people and they bring issues. Because all young people have got views, but we can't bring them into public forum. So if Denzel comes and Chipo comes and they are all young people, then everyone listens because you are representing your voice. So that's a pushback to say, get more organized. So that you use also the technologies.
That's there.
Because you will be heard. While you have got followers that are 1 million, you will be heard. And you can bring guests like the Portfolio Committee for Health to your podcast, the Minister of Finance to your podcast, the President of the country to your podcast, the Minister of Health to your podcast. You will be heard. Especially when you tell them that I'm an influencer. Look at 500,000 Zimbabweans are following me. I'm an influencer, just you. So let's push it back to you guys.
Exactly, it actually falls back on us as well. Actually, not on us, on us.
All of us.
Yes, because we are going to try. We are trying, but we also need your reassurance.
Also,
Because-
opportunities for mentorship.
Exactly, that was I was going. That we need more people like you who are willing to engage more people like us and build more people like us. Because as young people, we can come together, but there are certain things that we will not come with just the three of us, just the four of us, that we need you to actually come and tell us that this is the right path. So we have taken on the obligation to build more and stronger networks, whilst you take the obligation to actually support, mentor those organizations and young individuals who are actually interested in this, because it falls back to the both of us.
Okay, so maybe Denzel, to make it easier for you, we've got a very important structure called the Junior Parliament. It's got its own speaker, clerk, whatever. So that's an area where you can engage parliamentarians and say, bring the mentorship opportunities. Then secondly, we've got the Parliamentary Caucus on Youth Affairs. They've got a structure, they've got a committee. So that's an entry point to say, okay, we want to do a mentorship program in Chitungwiza. The Youth Caucus will engage. If they feel among the Youth Caucus they need more people, they'll look for Mulukele, who is a former youth, and say, come and join the mentorship.
Join the
So
mentorship.
it's not like there's no starting point.
Exactly.
Because the Youth Caucus is there. And the Junior Parliamentary is there.
Okay.
So let's
Order
start
in the
there.
house. Order.
Yes.
Order.
Just one last
Order in the house.
thing.
I would like for us to go on. I think it all goes back to accountability. We need to hold each other accountable of the decisions and also of the things that we would have said in public as well. And I don't like the statement where you guys would say, we are young at heart. And already you want to tell us what we need as young people because you think you are young at heart. You're not young at heart, you're old. Give us the chance to speak. Give us the chance to deliberate and to advocate what we want as young people. You know what? TikTok, time is not on our side. And it's always hard for me to get off your screens, guys, because we'd want to go on and on. And I hope we will have another chance to sit as we've done today and talk more about these issues. So as your parting words, just one word actually, Denzel, what would you like to say?
One word in my parting. Okay, I would like to encourage the young people out there to just step up. The world is advancing, and so must we. And we are not supposed to get too comfortable and rely that, no, we've got a Denzel out there who's going to do it. But maybe that Denzel out there is actually pushing for this issue and not necessarily experiencing what you might be facing. So that problem needs you to stand up, and it needs you to fight for.
Thank you, Denzel. And to you, Honorable.
I think for me, the message to young people is don't agonize, organize.
Okay.
Don't
Agonize,
agonize, organize. An organized voice is like a choir. You've got people structured. I'm alto, I'm tenor, I'm soprano. People listen to you better than if you all sing at the same time. So that's why there's a choir master. This is an organized group of voices. Young people have got issues, but they need to be organized so that the issues are clearly articulated. Once they are articulated, they are clearly heard. Who doesn't want to listen to a choir they sing beautiful songs, but they have a message?
Order, Honorable. Thank you so much for that. And I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. And we're definitely going to be giving you more of this as we unpack the SRHR landscape in Zimbabwe and even beyond borders. So from me, the Dynamite, and the crew behind the scenes, it's goodbye, besties.